I want to welcome you all to today's panel discussion, Experiences of Africans Escaping Ukraine. My name is Krista Johnson. I'm the director of the Center for African Studies at Howard University, and we're delighted to be having this conversation, very timely and important conversation this afternoon. I want to also just quickly acknowledge a host of co-sponsors who have joined us in putting together this panel this morning. The Ralph Bunche Center at Howard University, the International Affairs Program at Howard University, and then we have several of our HU student organizations that have really been instrumental as well in terms of helping us put this together and participating in organizing this with us. The UN Association Howard University chapter, the Knights Fraternity Incorporated, the African Students Association, as well, have been very instrumental, and I want to thank them very much for their participation this morning. This topic, everyone, of course, has been hearing a lot and has been watching the news with regards to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and it's on a lot of people's minds, of course, constantly these days. And we're all very upset and concerned with the not only the carnage that's happening in Ukraine, but also the refugee crisis and the displacement of millions of people as a result of this war. One of the topics that hasn't gotten as much coverage is the discrepancy of treatment among people leaving Ukraine and seeking refuge in places like Poland and other places in Europe. Poland has actually stood out as one of the countries that has been most welcoming to Ukrainians and people escaping the war and violence in Ukraine. But what we're going to focus on today, and we have a group of activists who are on the ground in Poland who will be able to give us a firsthand account of really what's going on at the border and how are Africans and people of African descent in particular being received and what has been their experiences with regards to the Russian invasion in Ukraine. So we're really excited. This is, of course, a very timely and important topic, and everybody has been wanting to understand better exactly what the crisis, what the nature of the crisis in Ukraine is. So this is going to help us really, I think, drill down a little bit more with regards to that. So before I turn it to our moderator, I also just want to thank, of course, our very own Ms. Anya Bueno, who is our communications director at the Center for African Studies. And of course, she has actually really been the brainchild behind this entire event. So I certainly don't want to forget to thank her and all of her hard work in bringing together a stellar collection, a group of activists and speakers and panelists for us to listen to today.
So our first presenter today is Dr. Tade Daniel Omotosho. He is the chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora organization in Poland. He has a multicultural background and experience in leadership development, business management, and community development. Currently, he lectures at the University of Wisła in Warsaw, Poland, University of Information Technology and Management in Rzeszów, Poland, and the University of Bari in Aldo Moro, Italy. He is the author and has published in several academic journals. He lives in Warsaw, Poland with his family. Our next presenter is Dr. Margaret Ohia-Nowak. She is a Polish-Nigerian anti-racism consultant and social activist, an inclusive language trainer, and a certified intercultural trainer. She is the coordinator of the Center for Inclusive Language at the think tank Diversity Hub in Poland. She is the chief editor at the Empathetic Polish Dictionary. Margaret is the founder of the Center for Intersectional Justice in Poland that focuses on facilitating conversations about race and supporting affinity groups for healing racial trauma through somatic and emotional work and nonviolent communication. She provides tailor-made training on embracing diversity, reducing bias, and promoting anti-racism in the workplace. She has published and presented academically on race and racism in contemporary public disclosure, racist disclosure, and representations of Africans and Africa portrayed by the media in Poland. She is the board member of the Polish People of African Descent Association. She is a co-founder of the Alliance of Black Justice in Poland, a group of organizations based in Poland and created by Poles of African descent and their allies to provide immediate relief for Black and Brown people fleeing the war in Ukraine, helping them rebuild life in Poland in the long term and advocate for racial equality. And then our final presenter will be Mr. James Omolo. He is the founder of Africa Connect Foundation, an advocacy organization on human rights issues affecting people of African descent. An active human rights activist, he has led various events, training sessions, and workshops and collaborations with various organizations and institutions. In December 2019, James achieved the United Nations Fellow on People of African Descent under the United Nations Office of Higher Commissioner of Human Rights. He authored 4 books on race relations, including Strangers at the Gate, Black Poland, Crossing the Color Line, Interracial Marriage and Biracial Identity, The Beast, White Supremacy, and Different but the Same. His past publications also include Chinese Foreign Policy in Sudan and Poland and Africa, Past, Present, and Future. James previously served as a lecturer at the University of Social Sciences and Humanities, Center for Postgraduate Studies and Training on Africa Business and Beyond, Success and Failure, with Expatriate Management. He has also provided guest lectures on race relations in several universities in Europe, including the University of Applied Sciences in Potsdam, Germany, and MA Childhood Studies and Children's Rights at the University of Vienna, Austria, Department of African Studies. Thank you to all of our panelists for being here. And Dr. Tade, please go ahead and start your presentation.
All right. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're joining us from. I'm so excited to be here this afternoon. I'm going to be sharing my screen so that I can share with you my own experience of Africans, who were escaping the war from Ukraine. I believe you can see my screen. Am I audible, loud and clear?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to be using Nigeria as the case study for most of the references I will be talking about. So I came across Nigerians more than other African students. So I'm going to be referring, from time to time to Nigerians. Of course, as we all know, on the 24th of February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. It was a full-blown, military attack. It was something we were not expecting, to say the least. By the 25th of February, a mass exodus began, and I'm sure we're all aware of that. It wasn't just an exodus of Ukrainians, but in fact also Africans. And personally, knowing that Poland is one of the major, viable Central European countries neighboring Ukraine, I knew that, Poland would be ground zero. And I knew a lot of people, will be trooping in. So in my organization, that's the Nigerians in Diaspora organization, we already started to feel uncomfortable about what was going to happen, because like I said, we were not prepared for this, So keeping in mind also that there are approximately about 4,800 to 5,000 Nigerian students alone in Ukraine. Of course, if you add all the other African students together, you'll be talking about almost 10,000 of them, So we knew this was going to be a serious emergency, crisis. So what we did immediately was to roll out our numbers. So myself and my executives, we roll out our numbers because we knew people will need information on what to do, So we went on Twitter and we put our numbers there. We went on all the other social media networks. We put our numbers up there. And of course, for us, that was the first stage of, the crisis management, which is, get a communication line out, get information out so that people can be aware of what was going on. So at that moment also, we were trying to get the Nigerian embassy involved, and we also made provisions to go to the border physically, so that we can be available to help those that are arriving at the Polish border and help them get to town. So that was the first action we took, and that was on the 25th, 26th, thereabout. And the next thing we did was we created a Telegram group, which of course you can see, I think at the moment we have over 3,000 people on that Telegram group, because like I said, we knew people will need information. So we made sure that there was a lot of information out there as per, which border to go to. And our phones also were available, for people to call us and, ask questions. And that also gave us a lot of opportunity to get, other volunteers, because the moment our numbers were out, a lot of people started reaching out and asking how they could help, from everywhere, from all over, For example, we had this Ukrainian lady, Mila from Ukraine, who was asking how, she could support. She was going to provide bulletproof vest, and all of that. So from the moment we rolled out our lines, we set up a crisis team, and we were bombarded with calls. We made arrangements, whereby people can call our lines, and we provided them all the information they needed to know, which border to go to, what to show at the border, what to do when they get to the border. We provided addresses and, all kinds of possible information that will be useful for them. So like I said, that information, the fact that we put our numbers out there was not just a source of information, but it created a kind of awareness. And, that also gave us open doors, for a lot of support, And then the first set of students that arrived on the 26th, thereabouts, because, we really didn't have any plans as to how we were going to accommodate them for the first part of the crisis. So I had to accommodate about 12 of them in my house. We had we got them warm stuff, because you can imagine that they were actually staying in the cold. Some of them had to stay at the border for 12 hours, some longer. Some of them had to walk really long distance and all of that. So we had to get them warm stuff, warm clothes, food, tea, and all of that. And then, of course, by the next day and the next, couple of days, we had gotten a bus and we were physically present at the border. There were actually 4 border entries, so we were going between those borders with this rented bus, as you can see there. So we were able to get them across to Warsaw. And for those, because we couldn't stay there for 24 hours, so we also made arrangement for some Polish volunteers, to help us get people to the train station. From two of the border points, there was a train station, I think about 15 to 20 minutes, distance. So we were able to get, someone to help us drive them to the train station and then put them on the train. Of course, the Polish government was amazing. They did a lot. They made those trains free for everyone. So those students did not need to even buy train tickets. So all we needed was just get someone to put them on the train, and then some of our team were waiting for them in Warsaw train station. So moving on. Like I said, we had a lot of, people writing us, people calling us, and we were just out there giving information. I would just like to be, very practical, and I'm just sharing with you some of the screenshots of, the kind of messages we were getting. So someone says here, Doctor, good afternoon. Please, I plead with you, kindly assist my boy out of Sumy. So Sumy was that part of, Ukraine that was actually they were trapped. There was no way of leaving Sumy at that time. It was one of those places where, there was no transport. They were cut off from electricity, and, these guys were just, hiding in the bunker. So, someone writes in here, I guess a parent, saying that please do help me get my boy out. And unfortunately, we were also helpless, because there was no way we could cross the border. We were just waiting at the Polish side of the border to help them as soon as they get to, Polish border. So the best we can do is just to give them some hope and just let them know we are trying all we can. We need the governments of, different countries, Nigeria, Ghana, to just come in and help those African students. So those were the kind of messages we were getting in. We were getting. Also, someone says they wrote to the embassy, but the embassy was giving them, flimsy excuses and things like that. So it was a lot of work. We were overwhelmed. Personally, I received those period. I think I did a kind of calculation, and I received about 84 calls in one day, and over 150 chats in one day. So it was overwhelming. We had people just, asking for different kinds of information and all of that. Yeah, and also imagine that there were people who did not have their documents with them. I knew a particular lady that the only thing she had was just a handbag, because she couldn't wait a minute to get her things packed. She just had to leave the moment there was, the first bomb, right? So a lot of people were stranded, and thankfully our communication lines were opened, and we were able to guide them as to what to do when they get to the border. Personally, we at some point we had to write letters just with my name particularly and my address and my phone number. We just sent it to their phones and say, we told them, when you get to the border, just show them this letter in Polish, they're going to let you in. So we did a whole lot of that, and a lot of people were able to come in, even though without documents. But I'm still going to talk about what later happened, because some people were detained as a result of not having identity documents with them. But I'm still going to get to that at the end of my slide. So just to show you what kind of communication we were having with people, and it was round the clock. We were working round the clock, in the middle of the night, very early in the morning, as you can see. People just sending messages and trying to get information. So those are some of the messages. And of course, the good thing we did was we made sure that we replied every single person, even if we were not able to reply immediately after 1 or 2 days, we made sure we replied them. And you can just imagine how happy we were getting to read from some of the parents. For example, this person here says, Dr. Tade, you seem to be the kindest and most hardworking. Your name rings a bell everywhere, and I wish I can give you an award for that. Someone said here, oh, thank God for me. I've heard from him. His phone got missing and he is good. So these were days after we were able to, settle down and reply some of those messages. So we had so much calls coming in, so many messages coming in, and we had to literally reply. At some point, I got tired. I had to give my phone to my wife, who was helping me to reply the mail. So it was a whole lot of stress. It was a whole lot of chaos. This was something we were not ready for, something we were not prepared for. But thankfully, we had a whole lot of people, helping. Like Margaret is also going to share her experience. She was also there helping us, James as well. We got a lot of help at the end of the day from the Nigerian embassy as well. They did a lot. They were able to organize transportation from the border, and they were also able to get accommodation for some of the people evacuated. And the good thing was also for those who wanted to return back to Nigeria, the Nigerian government provided evacuation flights, which of course that was also a big relief. Yeah. So as I just begin to wind down, just some of the highlights, like I said previously, we made sure we cared for everyone that we came across, irrespective of nationality. We were transporting, Togolese, Senegalese, Cameroonians, Ghanaians, obviously Nigerians and all of that. Our communication lines went viral, and that gave a lot of people access to real-time information. At some point, we knew of borders that were difficult to get into Poland from. So we were literally telling people, go through this other border because it's easier and there are less queues, And then, of course, it's important to note that Poland has already received nationals from more than 120 countries, including several African countries. So Nigeria, Cameroon, Ghana, Benin, Liberia, Togo, Sierra Leone, Equatorial Guinea, and others. Now, the problem I have with this whole government thing is that, there was no attention given to people of African descent. The attention and the focus was mostly on Ukrainians, and I think that's something we should also talk about. That's something we should also raise awareness for, and see how, the government in most of these countries, the five, so Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, and I think one other one, can actually, make provision for African students. Now as we speak, Ukrainians can work in Poland without a need for work permit. They can actually get free medical care. Personally, we had a girl that was pregnant, and there was no way she could actually get free medical service. So we had to pay, for her to go for the prenatal care and all of that. So I think this is a conversation we also have to bring up. So from my estimation, in total, we've got close to about 1,000 Nigerians that got into Poland. And about half of them were evacuated by the planes provided by the Nigerian government. Several others moved to different European countries, But my organization, the Nigerians in Diaspora, we were able to make contact with at least over 200 of those number. And currently, we've got about 20 of them still under our care, which means that we've been providing accommodation for them for the last 2 months. And then, we're also feeding them and providing other humanitarian service. So as I just wind down, so I can give time to Margaret and James, just some of the highlights I would want to emphasize. So some of the students were not allowed to get on trains and buses. These were reports that, I got. As you see in this picture here, this is the house where we accommodate the over 20 of them currently. That's the house we rented. And there are just a few of them you can see in the picture. So some of the reports I got from them was that they were not allowed to get on trains and buses at that time when they were, escaping. They were discriminated against, obviously, mostly at the Ukrainian side of the border. Of course, that had some kind of explanation at the beginning. The idea was that, you know, children and women were supposed to be allowed to go first, right? So it would be logical if an African man gets to the train and there are, I don't know, 3, 4 Ukrainian children and women. So it's normal. They would allow the children and women to go first. I don't have a problem with that. But then when you've got, you know, 4 African women and then you've got 4 Ukrainian women, and then you prioritize the 4 Ukrainian women over the 4 African women, then I think I have a problem with that. And that's obviously, you know, some form of discrimination. And I heard that a lot of that happened, you know, at the Ukrainian side of the border. So I think that's something we should really condemn, and we have been doing that. Some of the students said the pets were prioritized, you know, over them. Some said that they heard the soldiers, you know, say things like, "Oh, we could use them as human shields." You know, very derogatory things were said, and we condemned that. Now, the last part I want to talk about is we had reports that some Africans were detained, and immediately we swung into action. And from our findings, we realized that about 9 of them were not. So that happened at I think that happened at somehow at some of the border points. They were not as flexible as some other border points. So basically, these guys they did not have any documents to identify themselves. So somehow the immigration had the right to detain them, but it shouldn't be more than for 24 hours, you know. But again, I guess somehow because those boys, maybe they were not well informed, or maybe they didn't know what to do. Normally what they should have done is to ask, you know, to ask the border guards to call their embassy immediately, so the embassy can come, you know, forward and identify them, whether with their name or with the language or, you know, whatever. But long story short, these people were detained for more than 24 hours. Obviously, the border guards got a court injunction to keep them for longer. And as we speak now, out of the 9, about, I think, 5 or more have been released. And there are still 2 of them that we are hopeful that they will be released soon. We got a lawyer personally. My organization got a lawyer, and I've been speaking with those two boys and speaking with the lawyer as well. And he's prepared their bail request. And we're hoping that before the end of this week, next week, they will be released, because there are no reasons for keeping them. In fact, those boys said they are willing to go back to Nigeria. They just need to be released from the, you know, deportation camp where they have been kept. So these are some of the you know, personal experience I have heard. Some of the things we heard, some of the things we saw were heartbreaking. We were not prepared for this, like I said, but thankfully, you know, the pressure is less now. I believe that almost everyone who wanted to leave Ukraine, talking about the Africans, to escape the war, have done so at the moment. So we're dealing with just the cases of the detained people and those that are still in our care. Some of them want to get into school. We're helping them with getting admissions. Some of them want to work, and we're trying to, you know, connect them with work agency and all of that. So that's where we are. I guess I would leave the stage now for Margaret to talk about her experience, and I would be here for questions later on. Thank you very much. Yeah. There's some pictures of. Okay.
Thank you, Tade, and hello, everyone. So I will kind of follow up on what Tade was saying, and also will add some of the work that we have been doing. Let me share my presentation right now, and hopefully this is full screen. My name is Margaret Ohia-Nowak. I'm representing today the Alliance for Black Justice in Poland. It's a coalition of few organizations based in Poland. Those include Family Voices, Association for Multi-Ethnic Families in Poland, Black is Polish, New Visions, but also Foundation for Social Diversity, Anti-Racism Lab, and Center for Intersectional Justice. These organizations had been active in terms of fighting for racial equality and also advocating for inclusion of people of color and in particular people of African descent in Poland in public spheres and in public spaces and the politics in many other civic spheres in Poland. And we just see the support of Africans that were affected, as Tade was saying, by the situation in the war to a very large extent as something normal for us. So something just, for me, when I heard about the first evacuations on the February 25th. So after the war started, hearing from different members of Diaspora and across Poland, but also including Tade and Nido, but also from other countries. Because I was contacted by so many people, I was thinking what to do. I started already, just like Tade, starting organizing how people can get informed, and also receiving many phone calls about need for help and so on. But also receiving many disturbing stories of Africans and Black people not being able to actually flee the war and not being able to access the basic human rights, which is just living in safety and having freedom of movement. So let me share with you a few stories without the names of people that experienced these discriminatory practices and basically racism. Some initial stories include a story of a woman from Cameroon and her family who were pushed off the trains and made to wait 2 days for a train trip to Przemyśl, which is a city close to the eastern border, where I'm also close to right now. I am based here. I work here by the Ukraine border, and they were not allowed to board the train, so basically denied access to transport. So another group of Africans who managed to get on a train after spending a lot of days in the freezing cold. It was still winter in February and then in early March. They spent days in an underground bunker in Kharkov. And finally, when they were able to board the train, they were not permitted to actually board the train to the western part of the city in Lviv in Ukraine. Another African woman who tried to get on the train was forced to disembark, even though there were many empty seats on the train. Another Nigerian medical student that we are in touch with at the medical border in Poland, she was waiting 7 hours to cross the border, and then the Ukrainian border guards were stopping, said that also Ukrainian border guards were stopping Black people and sending them back to the queue, saying they had to let Ukrainians through first. So even though she was a woman, she was not allowed either. So the excuse was obviously that we are only allowing women with children, which was not true, because apparently there were 2 queues, and it's documented also. We have videos of that, and I will show you some videos in a moment that shows that there were 2 queues, or the people of color, in particular Africans, were denied access to enter the to exit the Ukraine and to cross the border. So these stories, as they were appearing on social media, recorded by those on the ground in Ukraine, so those trying to flee Ukraine, but also at the border. And also I went to the border once, to Medica border, didn't witness any discriminatory practice on the Polish side, but then heard there were many on the Ukraine side, and also people were not allowed to leave Ukraine only, and they were left in a freezing cold. So all these disturbing messages started just coming in and disturbing us, and you know, it was just impossible not to respond and not to do something, because it was just a double trauma for our community to be treated as second category citizen, a second class citizen in this very, very tragic situation of the war. And a very big mobilization of Polish people when it comes to helping white Ukrainians. So let me show you the video that I wanted to show you first. This is from the 26th of February, so just the first days. Hopefully the sound will work now. Yes. Oops. Sorry about that. I hope this will work. So you can see here Africans and Black people not being allowed on the train, even though the train already left, and the guards were standing there and basically blocking the entrance. And another video that shows other disturbing images, and these have been verified with the authors as well.
We don't have arms! We don't have arms! We are students! We are students! We don't have arms! We are students! We are students!
So here, these Black students shouting that they were students, and the guards pointing guns at them and not allowing them to actually access the queue. It was by the border. And this is February 27th, so also the beginning of the war. And why I call it the phase number one is because it was a very, very intense moment in terms of emotions also, and just very disturbing also to hear these stories and what we were doing at that time. We were passing information from between different individuals, but also sending volunteers from actually the the Alliance for Black Justice in Poland. We sent volunteers from the University of Warsaw, students and academics who wanted to be on the spot, on the ground at Medica border. And there was a tent where these people were helping specifically Africans who managed to cross the border, because it wasn't the end of the story. So once they finally managed to cross the border and they were let in by Polish guards into Poland, they would also experience exclusion. So basically, they didn't have any place, so they didn't know where to go. They were also denied basic humanitarian relief by many. They were denied transportation unless they accessed just those that Tade was mentioning, but there were many instances where people would not be allowed on to board the bus or other means of transportation. And then March 1st, so a few days, like a week after the war started, there was a big, a very disturbing situation also by the Polish border in Przemyśl, where a group of right-wing hooligans attacked many Black men physically. I won't share the video now, but you can see the source, so you can also look it up. They attacked a group of African men and also activists, NGO activists that were helping these refugees and spreading misinformation about Black men, that they were allegedly raping Black women and sexually assaulting them somewhere around Przemyśl. So basically this very big and explicit manifestation of white supremacy, showing Black refugees as threats and not real refugees, as also media represented, but also many politicians to this day and in Poland, unfortunately. And then we entered the phase number 2, and this was a time when we created a group, actually. So we decided, okay, we need to do something about coordination. It cannot just be, you know, us individuals replying to these phone calls and also going to the border one by one and so on, and driving people, asking people for help. So we created a group, Support Africans from Ukraine in Poland and Beyond. And we started receiving messages about accommodation, about transportation, about all these immediate relief that also Tade mentioned. So we helped with transport across Poland, but also already to countries west of Poland. We also partnered with the embassies on evacuations to home countries, particularly with Zimbabwean embassy, but also, of course, with Tade and with the Nigerian embassy. We also looked for and we secured short-term accommodation for Black and Brown people, specifically because those were also all of this is for Africans, but especially for accommodation. Many instances where people would be denied access to accommodation only because they looked the way they looked. So we had a man who offered an apartment, and then it turned out that this was for Africans. He said, "Oh no, sorry, this is not for foreigners. It's actually, I don't know how Ukrainians are not foreigners, but this is what he was saying, not for foreigners and not for people who don't speak Polish." So these were the arguments that he was using. But obviously it was about how they look like. We also assisted with translations to Polish because a lot of information was also only in Polish and in Ukrainian. So we assisted with translation from English and from French, and the other way around, from Polish and Ukrainian to English and French. We provided at that time also just accommodation in private homes with connections that we had. With food supplies, with cooked food and cooked African food. But we already started thinking about these kind of less basic needs as well, like for African women, hair products, and then we were started thinking about how to provide this help, which is specifically, and it's not the first thing that we will think about when you know, helping everyone, like hair products or going to the barber. Obviously it wasn't at the beginning, but then we started thinking about it, and medical assistant, psychological assistant, and we created a fundraiser also to obviously to facilitate and to allow us to meet all these needs. I also am showing screenshots from our conversations, or from my colleagues' conversations about organizing apartment, organizing accommodation, and so on. The phase number 3 was about it has been more about settling into Poland. So the first phase was evacuation and short-term relief, and now it's settling into Poland and beyond. but basically settling into Poland. So the Black Justice Alliance, as I said, is mainly created for this. It's a new coalition formed to provide a longer-term support for those who wish to stay in Poland and want to rebuild their lives here. So we assist with a various number of things, with legal aid and applications for legal stay in Poland, with job permits, with writing CVs, with medical insurance, getting medical insurance, but also kind of more urgent access to healthcare services. So we've, up until now, we have been in direct contact with over 150 people. But as Tade mentioned, there are a lot of people that also passed Poland, that they were just here for some time and we were helping them, and then they went to the Netherlands, to Germany, to Ireland, to the UK, or other countries. And these include nationals of Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Cameroon, Algeria, Libya, Mali, Sudan, Somalia, and Zimbabwe, Zambia, but also many more. And these include both students, or even though the majority of them are students and they want to either transfer to study here or they want to get admitted to universities in Poland. Right now we are more focusing on finding long-term accommodation, which is also oftentimes a challenge because the services are just accommodation facilities are packed, and then also there is a systemic barrier for the foreigners. Oftentimes they're being denied, and then when it turns out that these students, for instance, are Africans, it's also then explicitly expressed, oh no, we don't want people from outside of Europe, for instance. So we also, as I said, help in accessing healthcare services, but we also provide food supplies, and these are my colleagues Ogił Gono and Sarah Alexandra from Black is Polish, and they also are doing this in Warsaw. We are also assisting with legal assistance. We have 2 lawyers working with us, and so we are helping students and non-students submitting applications, and at the immigration office we write professional CVs for them, assist in job searching, as I said, and we also we help them transfer to universities. I personally have 5 students in Lublin that I'm helping. They've already been admitted to universities here, but it's just the first step. Then we have applied for tuition waivers because they are also relatively higher than in Ukraine, actually much higher here. So for tuition waivers or discounts as well, but also to find them accommodation, student housing, and just help them get around, sometimes with providing direct financial assistance. These are some pictures also from my colleague and myself. The one on the right-hand side is from the Easter with 2 students that I was hosting. We are trying also to provide them with healthy foods, because a lot of food supplies that come in are just with some, ready-made things and very salty and non-healthy. So trying to also take care of, just provide them with some veggies, and also just give them some social time together, but also provides psychological assistance. Hopefully in the future it will be more of this. And the last thing that we are doing is also advocating for equality and making a public pressure on those instances that Tade already mentioned. So also just shouting and trying to just communicate what's happening and bringing this information into public. People being sent to detention centers in Poland, across Poland, and being kept there as well, and not being able to access any assistance. And we know of these stories also from other countries, but also in situations where people were denied, like here on the left-hand side, denied access, denied boarding, basically. These Nigerians were going to to Ireland, traveling with their Ukrainian wives, but they were denied boarding and told that they should have visa, even though they had permanent residence status in Ukraine. So we've employed a lawyer to also watch this case and consult and just follow up on this. Yeah, and that's the last slide. I know I've been talking a lot, but this has been very intense, especially at the beginning. Right now, we are more coordinating. We are more the labor is better divided, and we are working on it on a daily basis. But the individuals that still need help are there, and we are just with them and trying to create the space in Poland, and not only in Warsaw, but also in Poznań, in Łódź, in Lublin, as I mentioned, in Kraków, so in different cities across Poland, trying to make their lives easier and also keeping the fundraiser up. So thank you so much for listening. And passing it to James now.
Hi, everyone. My video seems to be off. All right. Yes. Yes. Thanks, Margaret, and thanks everyone for participating in this. I think Margaret and Tade had already summarized actually what I was going to say. However, this shows that as much as we have particular organizations, we also work together, and not only working together as the three of us, but also we work in tandem with other organizations and our allies as well, due to our shared humanitarian impulse. It's about teamwork and unity. My presentation is not going to be something new. Most of them you've already heard, and it's going to be in two phases. The first phase is going to be based on the experiences of Africans fleeing Ukraine. These are the narratives, based on the narratives of those who are actually affected. And the second phase is going to be on what we do as AfricanA Foundation. Just so let you know, I represent not only as a founder of AfricanA Foundation, but also as a program director of Cosmodernity Consultants. It's a company, a consulting company that actually prioritize human rights issues of people of African descent worldwide. So the company has also been very instrumental in facilitating support mechanisms for people of African descent fleeing Ukraine. At the beginning, if I do remember very well, Tade mentioned of some Africans without documents being actually detained or being refused some sort of border crossing. And we noticed that actually the government, the Polish government, repudiated the allegations made that they denied most of the people to cross over, while Ukrainians actually, most of them without papers, were allowed to Ukraine. So we could see that in the midst of this invasion, many people of African descent had been entangled in this predicament. The war has just amplified and exposed sort of a continuum existential crisis of racial discrimination people of African descent have been facing in Ukraine for many, many years. So there's been quite a number of accounts of blatant discrimination by the border guards in Ukraine, as well as several border crossings by Africans who managed to cross borders into Poland, not only in Poland, but Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia. These accounts are now increasingly being reported and corroborated by global and local media outlets. Some of them, Margaret had already shown you. There are cases of violent attacks by some local vigilante racist groups as they attempted to flee the war in Ukraine. And as we also showed the video of Polish nationalists attacking Africans, the border as well as using some racial slurs. The nationalists actually fabricated a story that the Africans attacked them first, but the video footage contradicted the statements. So the discriminatory practices at the onslaught of the war actually is nuanced and multifaceted. There has been reports that preferential treatment is being accorded to white Ukrainians, people of African descent, and people of color were pushed back and told to wait for the Ukrainians to go first, which left actually some people with no choice but to spend days in extreme cold weather. They therefore resort to taking the perilous journey on foot towards the Polish border, only to be turned back. As one Nigerian reported, they told us blacks are not allowed, but we could see white people go through. Another Nigerian gave an account of how he actually walked for 4 days just to cross the border. He had to take a taxi to Hungarian border and then come back so that he could get through the border. There's also a cultural discrimination in accommodation, as Margaret inferred. The victims of war reported cases where we find that some organizations were actually giving preferential treatment to Ukrainians, leaving people of African descent and other people of color to homeless. And this happened actually in Poland and is still happening. So most of these people are being taken in by fellow Africans or by Polish allies. Some are reported to feeling insecure actually, being housed in facilities that are predominantly catering for Ukrainians. We can see here very clearly that the fear arises due to long exposure to various manifestations of racism while in Ukraine. Some documented and verified cases of people being stopped from boarding trains, as also the previous presenters shown. They're being stopped, segregated, pushed back to the end of the queue. Also showed that white Ukrainians are deserving while the rest are not. The deliberate, arbitrary, and forced regulations on evacuation trains, buses, and at the border crossings in denying or delaying free movement of people of African descent exhibits the gravity of segregation based on skin color. It not only shows bigotry, but further exposes people of African descent to the risk of ravaging bombing. It kind of crystallizes racism to an intense episode of distress. We can clearly see that the solidarity now extended to white Ukrainians is overwhelming and selective at the same time. Bombs or bullets do not choose the skin color. So solidarity should apply to all, regardless of race. Bigotry is morally and ethically repugnant in embracing humanity. It takes time and fair treatment for people of African descent and people of color, treated with dignity just like the other white Ukrainians displaced by war. So I'm going to the second phase of my presentation. Our scope of engagement in providing support mechanisms to people of African descent and people of color is within the following areas: in education, human rights, legal aid, transport and accommodation, and basic supplies. Some of the statements here, or some of our engagement here, are going to overlap with those of of Tade and Margaret by virtue of actually working together. So we also share. And just also to let you know that at the beginning, at the onset of the war, we actually established an emergency response team via Facebook group. So everybody were sharing their narratives, they were sharing the engagements, and we could find solution to particular activities or particular issues that needed to be dealt with immediately. So when I start with education, as we know, majority of the majority of the people of PAD actually that were fleeing were students. And some of them wanted to go back home, some wanted to continue their studies here in Europe or here in Poland. So what we did is actually to connect them with some of our allies who had a good network with the local universities so that they could actually find places or spots within the local universities. We also contacted our networks outside, abroad actually, in Germany, in Ireland, in Netherlands, some of the civil society groups that we've been in synergy with, and they're trying to help by providing basic information regarding the respective universities in terms of scholarship, in terms of tuition fees, study programs, and any other necessary information that will actually help. So our Polish allies have actually been instrumental in reaching out to universities, and so far, 2 universities have already accepted to allocate some spots for Africans fleeing Ukraine. And also, we know that a lot of the students who have been evacuated are actually facing several challenges due to the loss of documents, their credentials, or their difficulty in retrieving important academic documents. So we're trying to also facilitate or have a talk with the universities if they could actually try to admit them regardless of their credentials in a way, but they also will look at the way of how they can do that in terms of probably giving them some entry exams or something like something like that in a way. When it comes to human rights issues, and particularly in the case of racial discrimination, at the onset, as I mentioned, the government denied allegations of the incidences of racism and reiterated that everyone from Ukraine will be treated equally. The contrary speaks louder. We saw several attacks at the Polish borders. So what we did is that our organization, together with other organizations and Polish civil society, we wrote a petition to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Interior, condemning the incidences and asking actually for an action to be taken. Unfortunately, probably it went to the deaf ears. Some of our team members, some of the members of the team and the members of the group actually also got in touch with the German counterpart, the Secretary of State under the Ministry of Justice, and they also wrote an interministerial letter to the Polish government condemning the incidences of racism or the incidents of the attacks. So we've been trying to also put pressure on the government into first acknowledging and also acting on those cases, even though there's lack of interest in that. When it comes to legal aid, we've been actually recommending some cases of human rights abuses to pro bono immigration lawyers who are our allies to take some cases that entails also human rights violations actually. So they mostly provide necessary information regarding the immigration laws. We have also, as Margaret mentioned, we have a case where some Africans were taken to detention centers. Actually, they're still in detention centers at the moment. So it's a matter that we are actually following up on. The lawyers usually provide advice on legalization of stay in Poland, since Polish regulations and law may be really difficult for foreigners. It's been difficult for us, those who've been here for many years. The second part is we facilitate the stay of these displaced people. We sort of intensify our consultation operations where we engage again with our allies to provide legal service in areas such as legalization of stay, labor laws, civil laws, administrative laws. We are at the moment working on funding prospects with good funding. Actually, we believe we can be able to provide a top-notch legal services to the displaced African community. Another part is we've been also coordinating with civil society and NGOs abroad, particularly in Netherlands, Germany, in providing humanitarian needs, because while addressing other areas, but also the provisions in terms of immediate aftermath of arriving here, we found that most people had little or no financial capacity to acquire food and essential goods, and this is especially acute need for families with small children. So we have actually built a network with other NGOs abroad, and they bring supplies such as food, medicine, clothes, toiletries, and then we distribute them to some of the people who are really in need, regardless of the country of origin. And lastly, is part of the transport and accommodation, which is almost similar to what the previous speakers mentioned. So whilst accommodation is being made available for all victims, I think I mentioned it in my opening presentation, the people reported to us that people of African descent and other people of color have been exposed to various acts of discrimination. Many of these people have actually reached out because they have nowhere to go. They don't know anybody here. And unfortunately, in many countries, they don't have embassies in Poland. I mean, I think in the whole of Poland, in the whole of Africa, there are probably 6 embassies in Warsaw, in Poland. The rest are accredited embassy. Majority of them are based in Berlin. But we saw countries without embassies in Poland. Their citizens actually were suffering a lot because they had nowhere to go. They had nobody to contact. So we were also focusing on those people. So what we did, we tried to allocate them in our private homes and across the African network here, and as well as our Polish allies. We had an overwhelming support from our Polish allies who opened their homes for them. So again, we are also working on a long-term plan. That said that we are also look at the prospects of developing funding mechanisms in acquiring a stockpile of homes and apartments, specifically designated for people of African descent, so that they can address their problem immediately without waiting for anything else. So when it comes to transport, also we've been coordinating transport for people of African descent from the reception centers to other countries. Majority of them actually went to Germany, where we had a good cooperation with one organization which is run by people of African descent, and they came with almost 5 buses with full of supplies and took back many Africans with them. And at the moment, they are in Berlin and other cities in Germany. So yes, I guess that marks the end of my presentation. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James. Now we will have our student moderator, who is Israel Olu, take over and go into the Q&A session. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I want to thank our three presenters. This was very informative, very insightful, and I learned a lot today just by you through presenting. So thank you. I'm gonna jump into the chat questions first. You can also unmute and ask your questions, but if you want to, please raise your hand first, and I can call your name, and then you can ask your questions. But I'll start with the chat questions. So the first question was from Emily Couch, Program Associate for Ukraine at Freedom House. And this question was for Dr. Omotosho and Dr. Ohia-Nowak. So the question is, how much cooperation has there been between organizations such as yours and organizations inside Ukraine that deal with issues of racism and discrimination? And what can international organizations such as the Freedom House do to assist in this situation?
Yeah, all right. So I guess I would go first before Margaret. I personally, we do not have much contact with any organization in Ukraine. Of course, when you talk about, racial issues, but we do have a lot of contact with organizations within Europe, within Poland, IOM, OS. OECD and all of would be open to, if there are known organizations that are willing to partner with us, to cooperate with us, we'll be willing to, to synergize and work with them, because when it comes to the racism that we have, African students have experienced, I think it's something we should all keep speaking about. It's something we should keep finding a way to bring the stakeholders to the table, especially the governments that are concerned, and talk about this issue. So we do not have any cooperation with Ukrainian anti-racial organization, but we do have a lot in Poland and other places.
Yes, I would support what Tade said about IOM. They have been helping a lot and partnering also with us to some extent in terms of finding accommodation, a long-term or short-term. But from day one, I was actually trying to find specifically anti-racist organizations in Ukraine. I was in touch with African Ukrainians who were just like me, of mixed heritage, and this is a very small, tiny community. But none of them could really help me with any response. So they kept saying, "Oh, there are no anti-racist, particularly organizations that would be based in Ukraine and of Ukrainians, or let alone African Afro-Ukrainians or African Ukrainians, people of Ukrainians of African descent." This was also an interesting discovery for me, although it wasn't very surprising. I have to say, because this was happening so quickly, also the partnerships that were formed or arranged were also kind of like, okay, so there is Red Cross evacuating students from Sumy. There is IOM who is helping in Poland, so you can contact them. There is Each One Teach One in Germany who are also helping students. So we are just trying to kind of catch these contacts, but not really been able to establish any kind of long-term, other than writing petitions. From my point of view, as James was also saying, writing petitions to government, to ministry, to global communities, and also as Tade, just communicating with organizations across Europe and across the world, but not yet being able to establish anything that would be solid and kind of like just focus on the victims, the Black victims of the war.
Yeah, maybe just to add one or two things to that. I've been in Ukraine, and I also think that Ukraine particularly is not, I would say, a very friendly, country, especially to Africans, if I can put it that way. So like Margaret said, I'm not sure if there are a lot of functional anti-racist organizations in Ukraine. I'm not sure, but I think that's something we should start to look at and see how, we can walk around that. Yeah.
Before we go to the next question, I'm just going to launch the event poll. So other participants should be able to see the event evaluation poll. Please just answer the 3 questions, and while everyone's doing that, we can continue to the next question. Thank you, Israel.
Thank you, and thank you for your responses. I do see Ugoji, you have a hand up.
Hello there. Thank you very much. Sorry to intervene. I'd like to first and foremost say a huge thank you to you all. Dr. Ugoji Eze, I'm actually at the United Nations in New York. One thing that has really struck me, and both at the UN, is a wall of silence on this issue of discrimination against Black and brown refugees fleeing Ukraine. Now, it seems to me as if the international community just does not want to deal with this issue, what I'll call parts of diplomatic nicety. It's very important to indeed raise this issue of the blatant discrimination which refugees of color have faced. And I myself, I am an international lawyer. I intend to raise it at the UN within the next few days and month. I shall be hosting a high-level virtual event which will specifically focus on the issue of discrimination and violation of the fundamental human rights of refugees of color. Once again, I'd like to say a huge thank you to the participants and also to the speakers for raising this issue and talking about it. As I say again, there is a wall of silence, even in the corridors of the United Nations, against this issue which is blatantly obvious. And also the international media has a part to play in this. When you watch the television, you just see white Ukrainians fleeing. Where are the Black faces? Why isn't CNN, Sky, BBC highlighting these issues? The cameras are quite conveniently zoomed in on the white Ukrainians fleeing. When you speak about the Ukrainian crisis, it seems to me as if it's just the white Ukrainians, not the people of color. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Eze. Thank you for that. Thank you. That was it's definitely something to think about. Wisdom Honorable, I see you also have a hand up. You're still muted. I'm not sure if you, I can move on to the next chat question for now. And Carol Marie Webster, I also see you have a hand up. After this next chat question, I'll also get to you. So the next question is from Helena Gordon. So they ask, while many of the arguments presented today are extremely upsetting and clearly display acts of racism, I cannot happen to notice that indeed it would be difficult to expect the systems which are already at capacity to take not only war refugees, but also the foreigners who stayed in the country affected by war. So could you confirm if African foreigners have expectations to also stay in other European countries, although they do have a place that they can call home? And this is for Dr. Ohia-Nowak.
Okay, I hope I understood the question. I was reading it.
I could clarify.
Yeah, go ahead. Sure, thanks.
Sure. I so much admire your work. I have been following you for ages now, and just such an honor to be able to liaise with you directly. So thank you. Yeah, so kind of I have seen this argument, and I didn't really have any counter argument, to be quite honest. You know, I have been with the Rodziny Bez Granic, like Families Without Borders movement, since the onset. You know, we have been protesting and, you know, and claiming the right for everybody to, you know, be able to easily come and access Poland. But I found it very difficult to answer this question. So I have noticed that the foreign students, for example, Spain or Italy or other countries, they just, you know, when the war broke, they just moved back to Italy or Spain or wherever. Whereas I have seen some claims, you know, like of people of African descent, like an expectation that they would like to stay in Poland and not just simply move back. And, you know, I have lived in Africa for 10 years, so I can kind of somehow sometimes relate to the reasons why. But on the other hand, I can kind of see that the expectation, you know, it may not be in line with what people perceive. So they see the refugees, so people who have lost home, whose homes were bombarded, and then they see students a little bit as a separate group, like more similar to a tourist in Ukraine. So like they wouldn't really put them together with a refugee who lost their home. So kind of, how do you feel that in this whole discussion today, how this plays in really, and what's your view?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I guess I did understand the question then. It makes me feel very angry because these kinds of statements, okay, why don't you go back home? Because it's just, you know, it's so easy to do. It's not easy. It's not easy to go back to an African country where you were working so hard to get to the European country. It's another manifestation of white supremacy and structural racism. The fact that, you know, going to Europe is such a big thing, it's such a big journey. I mean, it's also at the cost of experiencing all this discrimination here. You know, these people want to stay here. It also shows how this racism is embedded in the structures, and it's also normalized because many students here as well, like those that I'm working with in Lublin, they say, we cannot afford going back to Nigeria. We cannot afford going back because we will never come back. It took so much of us to come here for our parents to pay for the studies. It's not like going back to Spain, you know, because going to Ukraine was like a study exchange. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but it's a really, you know, a different structural dynamic, and it's a power dynamic that forces also students from Africa to go to Europe. It's as I said, explicit manifestation of racism, but at the same time, the fact that they even want to stay here at the cost of, you know, they experience inhumane treatments oftentimes, but still they perceive this place as a better place because it's a white place, it's a white dominated space, so, which means, of course, it means it's, you know, it's better. And this is the colonial continuity. I think it's a longer conversation as well, that it's just, you know, the fact that, and these statements, okay, why don't they just students, they can just move around and go back and then come back after the war ends or something like that. It's not true. So,
do you agree
yes,
that Polish people may not have that perspective? They may just simply not understand it. They may not understand the effort that it took for African people to come to Europe. Like they just don't understand the journey. They don't have that. They just don't they don't have it in their mind. They like, of course, it's nowhere there. So they think
this is white privilege. You don't have to consider many things. If you're privileged, you don't have, it's, yeah.
Go back to the country of origin, but you know, our system is at capacity. So, you know, like I can kind of see that it's just that there is no consciousness of,
yeah, but the denial of systemic racism is very prevalent in Poland, and it exists as in other European countries as well. And white privilege is always invisible for people, and this is what white privilege is, that you don't see, that you don't have to actually consider barriers or obstacles, because basically you don't have them, because, you know, you're entitled. So yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a mom of a half Tanzanian son who just yesterday, I was just given a form from his music school, which assumed that he was not Polish just because of the color of his skin. So I just face it on an everyday basis. So thank you so much.
Yeah. If I might just add to that, just like Margaret has said, I think the other issue we have is if you look at the way this whole thing was organized right from the beginning, Polish government actually gave 15 days, to anyone who is not European coming in from Ukraine. So basically what that means is that you're supposed to transit from Poland. You're not expected to stay. So the tone and the communication, the body language is, we don't want you here. We don't want you to stay here, okay? You've been displaced from Ukraine, so just go back to your country. So there is no consciousness, like it's been said, there is no, this consciousness that these people have actually sacrificed a lot. Some of them are, I do have medical students who are in Part 5, who are in almost the final year of their studies, and all they just want is a place to, to stay, to just, round off their school, just finish their school, and then do whatever else they want to do. So I think we need to keep talking about this. We need to still come back to the table and keep raising awareness for this equality and inclusiveness. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And we definitely are running low on time. So I just want to ask if any of the panelists are able to stay longer. I know we still have some questions that need to be answered.
Sorry, unfortunately, I have to run to something else, but thank you so much for your questions, for being here and for having me here. And I hope we can stay in touch. And thank you, Tade and James as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Helena.
Thank you
so much, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah, I'm still here for a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Carol, I can take your question if you are ready.
Hello, thank you so much for this entire presentation. I've been literally yelling and screaming about this since February 28th, when it was brought to my attention that African students and melanin-rich students were having trouble finding refuge in the middle of a war. What I would like to know is, do you have a list of organizations that I can have access to, so that I can point myself and other people to, that can help the students that have found refuge in Poland get to whatever their next step is. Thank you also for bringing to the attention of folks that when you're fleeing war, you're just fleeing war. You're already in trauma. You may have not taken all of your necessary documents. You may not have been mindful enough to get transcripts, but you need to get your body to safety. And it is interesting that that's the one thing that the Ukrainian community, who were gatekeepers to that safety, were denying African and melanin-rich individuals. So to be able to be safe. Yeah, so if you can share a list of organizations, that would be great. And drop it in the chat, because I have been amplifying this, this issue since the 28th of February, when it was brought to my attention. So please. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we'll come up with that list. I'm not sure if on top of my head now I can give you that list, but of course my organization is one of them, Margaret as well, James as well, because we represent different organizations, but we work together. So I guess we can get that across to you through the organizers. I think that'll be fine. Yeah.
Yes, we can share that on the event page after the event.
Great, great.
Yeah, and we can just put our email in case you can reach out to us, just as a reminder, but we also try to reach out.
Yes, actually, I will drop my email in, drop my email to you all privately because I don't know who's on this thing, but I would like to do that. Thank you.
Right. Okay, that'll be fine.
Okay, thank you for that question. So now, Wisdom Honorable, you may speak and ask your question.
Oh, all right. Thank you for the opportunity. I don't know if I'll be giving, because I don't want to ask a question, because since this war started, right? I was studying in Ukraine, but I do not have a phone to communicate with anybody. The phone I had to spoil on the road because we are dragging the train station. I was living in Kharkiv. So since I came, my family over there in Nigeria, they have been, if they have small money, they send, but before it will get to me here, it will eventually maybe turn to something that doesn't have meaning again because of the cost. So I haven't had any opportunity. If I can share my video, but it's not possible. Maybe you can see me. So I left Ukraine, though I left Ukraine for 2 days, but I got to the Polish border. But because of the problem there, I have to walk back again to Ukraine. So until I got a friend who has been working here in Poland, but he have to tell me another border that they opened. So I have to return back to Polish border again on the 28th. But when I returned was in midnight. All my friends I had in Ukraine all left before me. I mean, they just left because no contact, my phone having problems. So I have to journey this alone. So when I arrived here in Poland, I arrived something like was midnight, but at the end they stopped my passport and they drove me to Lublin. So I mean, since I've been in Lublin, I've been catering, my family sent more money. I just found the place I rented. So since then, I've been here struggling for myself, trying to, when I got another person just help me with the phone. So that is how I just opened my Facebook. I just saw this meeting. I decided to log in, even if I would see somebody who would just give me listening ears, you understand, to even know, because I do not know any organization helping anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Wisdom. Sorry for
No
butting
problem.
in. Which city are you? Are you in Poland?
Yeah, Poland. I'm in Lublin.
Which city are you?
Lublin.
Lublin, that's where Margaret is from. So you need to connect with Margaret. Okay, or connect with me as well. I'm in Warsaw. It's just 3 hours away from where you are. We do have free accommodation in Warsaw, free food, free accommodation, free, materials and whatever you need. We can help you get into school. We can help you with your, residency and all of that. And that's what we've been talking about. Okay, so just get connected with me or with Margaret or with James. And we'll be glad to
so how
take you
do
on
I get your number or anything after this call? Maybe email. I have a phone right now. I think I can be able to. The landlord I'm living with.
So why not get in touch with the organizers of the event, and then they can just so that I don't give my email right out here.
Okay, sure.
Or you can write me directly on the chat if you can do that.
All right.
Okay.
I'm gonna try.
All right.
I'm gonna try.
Good luck then. Good luck then. All right. Israel,
thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing Wisdom, and this is really what it's all about. I'm really happy that something like this could have worked out in real time. This is exactly. It's very beautiful, Jerome. Like, it really made me happy. So thank you guys for sharing. Thank you guys for this event. I do have one more question from the chat. And this question is from BJ. And I guess this is actually a really good closing question. And BJ asks, how can persons attending the Zoom meeting also assist with the present situation? This can be a general question to both Dr. Omotosho and Mr. James Omolo.
Okay, James, you want to go first?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's a very important question, actually. I think if you did follow my presentation, most cases, the main issue here. We are just NGOs. We are also incapacitated in a way. We've done actually what African embassies should be doing. We've done what the government should be doing. Unfortunately, they're not doing that. And that, because we are just individuals also with their, private life, and also wants to put food on the table for their families. So we barely have time to squeeze ourselves into, other matters, but we try as much as possible to do that. So what's important for us is actually, and what we've been trying to do is to raise funds so that we can support our brothers and sisters when it comes to hiring lawyers, because not everyone will do pro bono business. Hiring lawyers, having apartments, even sometimes even having supplies is very important. And we can only do this when we have enough funds with us. I think almost every organization here, all of our 3 organizations, plus other African-based organizations, we've been trying to raise funds actually. And this is the thing. There's one organization, one African organization who had a fundraising proposal at the same time a Polish organization had theirs. They work in the same area. One raised 1 million within 1 week. The African organization raised 450. So you can see the disparity. And it's like we are all alone because our main focus is basically on people of African descent, and that doesn't resonate well with the rest. So we try as much as possible. And actually, people of African descent need a lot of support because they don't get that support from the government in many cases. And that makes us actually even work twice as we could have worked. So the main thing is how we can raise funds in order to support our people. We've tried to manage some small funds for other organizations, so that when somebody comes, they can get accommodation for them. When you had Tade promising a free food, free accommodation, all those kind of free stuff, it's not that he has everything, but because the people actually donated some money for all those for the help. So yeah, I think in my case, I would say funding is very essential part of this operation we are trying to do.
Yeah. Well said, James. I think I wouldn't add anything much to that other than say that we just need to keep having this conversation, until it gets to the right places, right? Okay, I think we should move on now.
All right, thank you for your responses. We do have one more question. You can go ahead and unmute.
I think there's Edwin there.
Yeah, Edwin Nichols.
Edwin, yeah.
I would suggest that you contact the Roman Catholic Church. Many of the Africans, when I look at their names, Nigerians particularly, they are Igbo, and the Igbo part of Nigeria is very Catholic, very Roman Catholic. And you have large Roman Catholic churches throughout all of Poland. And they have bishops and cardinals and so forth. And so I would look to Catholic charities to give you funding that could support. And through that same mechanism, some of the Catholic homes could open and give access to students and pay tuitions and so on. So I would call upon the Roman Catholic Church of Poland, if necessary, through the Roman Catholic Church and the Cardinal in Nigeria, some of the bishops in Nigeria, to contact the Polish Catholic Church and ask for donations and charity through their Caritas organizations.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we've been in touch with Caritas and they provided free accommodation. But the thing is, they are not in all the cities. We've been able to work with them in Krakow, that's the western part of Poland, and they've been really helpful, providing free meals and places to sleep and all of that. So we're still going to explore that, and that's a good suggestion. Thank you, Edwin. Yeah,
you're very welcome. Mm-hmm.
All right, so our last question for the event is going to be Dr. Eze.
Hello, following on from what Edwin said, I'd also suggest you contact Jewish organizations, a refugee organization, HIAS, HIAS. I'm sure they'll be of great help. And if I believe you have my email, if you can contact me, I'll give you a list of organizations who'll be more than willing to help. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Eze. Yeah.
All right, well, I really do want to thank my three panelists once again, Dr. Omotosho, Mr. James Omolo, and Dr. Margaret. I really just want to thank them. This was very informative. I want to thank Dr. Krista Johnson for opening it up. And I want to thank the Center for African Studies. This is a great event, very well put together. I will definitely say, follow up with, the HU Ralph Bunche Center and the Center for African Studies for more events like this one. And this was recorded, so this will definitely be accessible. Yes, you can see in the chat, it says at HU Bunche Center. Definitely follow them on social media so you can keep up with future events. But thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day.
All right. Thank you for,
Israel.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This event will be available to view on our YouTube, the YouTube of the Center for African Studies at Howard. And please check back on the event page as well for links to the organizations. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Be well.